Hey guys, today I'm going to tell you about something really cool that happened on server. For those of you who don't know, we have a Captain's Log channel where players can post high quality RP posts. And recently there was a duel challenge issued from one of our players, Snake, to one of our players, Danimal, and of course Danimal responded that he accepts the duel of skill. And as expected in any simulated economy, betting started. And players started placing bets that eventually ended up with a $174 billion purse, which is a lot of money. And so the time comes for the appointed duel, and the two players show up in their ships, spaced from each other, everything is set up. There is an observation post set up by the Laconian factions so that it's public. People can spawn and watch the duel, and people are sitting in these couches, and I'm streaming it on Discord, and there's probably 30 people watching this. And this was all set up by the players. There's basically no admin intervention. Everything is organized and run by the players. There are rules that the players are following, and there are other factions that are enforcing a no-fly zone around the duel. And of course, after some incredible chat introductions by myself of the opponents, the duel begins.
3, 2,
Right out of the gate, we have some weird weapon stuff going on for Dan. His weapons are firing at some NPCs that have spawned near him. But Snake is honorable enough to pull away to let Dan fix his weapons. And after they are fixed, both players move into railgun range and start railgun brawling. One thing you should notice is that Dan is flying a 2 railgun ship and Snake is flying a 3 railgun ship. Now Dan's ship does have a coil gun on the bottom, but for some reason, according to Dan and his team, it was not working for this fight. The red and blue lights and colors were not set up by the players in any way. It actually happened completely organically that one of them was flying a red ship, one of them was flying a blue ship, which is perfect, just like the Gladiator Arena in Skyrim. I've cut out a lot of the boring parts, but you can see that the players just continue to trade railgun volleys, and these ships, cruisers, are built to be redundant and to be able to take a ton of railgun hits. There do end up being some big hits. I'm not sure if this hit takes out Snake's thrusters or if he turns them off intentionally, but it's a pretty big hit coming up. And of course another NPC spawns and Snake has to absolutely obliterate it before the fight can continue. While the NPCs were annoying, I thought it was an interesting aspect of the duel that both players had to deal with them constantly and be a good enough pilot to ignore them and shift their focus to the real enemy. Both players continue to railgun duel each other. Each ship is getting worse and worse for the wear, losing parts. You can see that Dan is leaking reactor fluid out of his reactors, so some of his reactors hit, some big explosions causing some maybe thrust problems. One of the strategies here that both players are trying to employ is to take out each other's thrusters, try and get a mobility kill so they can move in and absolutely demolish their grid without it running away. But interesting enough, you'll notice that these two players are getting slowly closer and closer, and that's going to come into play here in a sec. The absolutely insane amount of hits these ships are trading and still flying. Ooh, and looks like Snake has lost all of his thrusters except for one. Now both players agreed to allow some friendly, we call them suit monkeys, but people who are inside the ship who are trying to repair the ship and maybe add thrusters or repair fuel tanks so the duel lasts longer. Like I said before, the players get closer and closer, and as they get close enough, here comes this massive CQB problem that they're about to have. Look at the hits these guys are about to trade, absolutely demolishing each other's ships in every single way. Just a reminder that CQB is absolutely devastating for everyone involved, and it looks like Snake shoots off some torps and one connects at the end there with Dan. And Dan returns fire with his own volley of torps. These ships are not meant to be torp cruisers, so this is just a tactic to keep your enemy busy. Snake easily handles those low amount of torps, and just look at these grids. They've taken an absolute beating. I think both of them have lost most of their thrusters. Dan, I think that is the torp hit that took out the huge chunk in the center of his ship. Oh, and an absolutely another devastating shot by Snake. Each one of those big explosions you see on the player's grids when they get shot with a railgun is either a fuel tank exploding or an ammo cache, which is a cargo full of shells or railguns or torpedoes exploding. Trying to get a little closer, look at the amount of damage that these players have taken. Dan's grid is basically just smoking and venting excess radiation from his damaged reactor. Just an absolute slugfest. These ships, I can't even believe they're still flying, but they just keep on shooting each other with these railguns. We call it poking holes because railguns go right through basically your whole ship unless they hit a reactor or something really, really big like another weapon. And another huge explosion on Dan. That has to be a fuel tank. And as we look at Snake coming in, he looks like he got one of his thrusters. Ooh, looks like Dan just took out his thruster. And I mean, Dan only has one thruster too. This is just turning into a battle of corpses at this point. Wow, look at Snake's grid. Yeah, it looks like you can see some of his grinder monkeys or suit monkeys flying around inside of his grid trying to repair things, and he only has two small non-original Epstein drives on this thing, so they've been adding drives and trying to replace them just to keep this ship moving. Huge hole in the side of it, flames coming out of the top, massive damage to both ships at this point. At this point, it's becoming really hard for either pilot to control their ship, so they actually end up drifting away after this little engagement here. The pilots agree to return to a certain GPS, and they both end up flying towards each other, but not after trying to repair some stuff, trying to get any thrusters they can back online or any weapons that have gone offline. And as they move back into the range, this has got to be... Ooh, Dan just lost his last thruster. This has got to be the last engagement. Dan can't move his ship, so there's no chance of him really dodging any of the rail shots or any other damage coming in. So at this point, Snake is just railing him, absolutely destroying everything inside of his ship, targeting power, targeting thrust, targeting anything that's gonna help him destroy this ship. I said it once and I'll say it again, I can't even believe this ship is still flying. There's a huge hole. You can literally see right through this ship. Look at it. It is in pieces. There are multiple pieces of Dan's ship floating around, and somehow it is still shooting back. It's missing 50-60% of the hull at this point. The nose looks absolutely pristine though, so maybe whatever Dan is doing there should apply to the rest of the grid. skipping ahead to where they come back into range with each other, and Dan is still dealing damage to Snake. That's the problem. Snake keeps on coming back into range to try and get a kill shot, but Dan still has both of his railguns up and he's still returning fire. I'm not sure what Snake is targeting with his weapons at this point, but if I was Snake, I would be targeting Dan's weapons, trying to take those railguns offline so I could move in for a final kill. Moving back over to Dan's grid, oh my gosh, look at this huge hole in the center. You can literally see the sun right through the middle of his ship. At this point, Dan is barely returning fire. My guess is he has lost so many reactors and so many batteries. Oh, and he lost a railgun on top there too now. He probably doesn't have anything left to recharge these railguns, probably firing very slowly as opposed to Snake, who still almost seems like he has full recharge. Wow, look at the absolute carnage floating around Dan's ship. Snake just continues to poke and prod him from the perfect range, maybe being able to dodge a few of his shots while Dan can dodge none. And I think this is gonna be it. Dan can't move, his railgun looks pretty, oh, there it is. There's the good fight, and that is a GG for this fight. I thought it was really cool that this was completely player run. The betting was player run. Everything was player run. All I did was show up and film it, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot more of these. Wow, chunks coming off Dan's ship, and Snake's ship did not survive without a bunch of holes. There's actually holes straight through the ship, and it looks like his welder monkeys or suit monkeys actually did a great job repairing some of the internal systems. That might have been the difference in this fight. Hope you enjoyed. If you want to join the server, link is in the description.